I met Jeffrey in 2011. I was foolish to spend time with him. I was one of many people who regret ever knowing him.
I also met Jeffrey Epstein exactly one time.
Did you?
Yes, because I wanted to see who this man was. And I regretted it from the second I stepped in the door. He was abhorrent. He was evil personified. I had nightmares about it afterwards. So, you know, my heart breaks for these young women because that's how I felt. And here I'm an older woman. My God, I feel terrible for those young women. It's awful.
We're sitting down there having cocktails while Bill Clinton's getting a massage from some girl who's rubbing her tits against the back of his head while she's massaging him. Yeah. He's like, hey, that's really interesting. Hey, I'm kind of tired. I'm going to take a nap.
Another thing about black holes.
Yeah.
What you're about to hear sounds like something straight out of a movie. But this time, it didn't come from a script. It came from a microphone, a podcast, a conversation that quickly turned into something much bigger than anyone expected. Because when Joe Rogan sat down and started talking about the Epstein files, he didn't hold back, not even a little. He didn't tiptoe around it. He didn't sugarcoat it. He went straight for the names. The same names that have been whispered about for years, but never openly discussed like this. And the shocking part? He did it all in under 30 minutes. 30 minutes. That's all it took for one of the most powerful voices in media to shake the internet, spark outrage, and make millions of people stop and ask one simple question. How deep does this really go?
It's so tangled. You know, the whole thing is just, I think everybody who looks at it realizes this is a rabbit hole that just goes to the center of the earth. And there's so many people involved in that. Here's the big question that people ask. If there was a Jeffrey Epstein, and it seems like all these things he was involved in, is there a Jeffrey Epstein right now that we don't know about?
There's a million of them.
A million of them.
I mean, this is why I find this. You know, this is not the core of what I focus on, but I find it a really interesting field of study because it helps understand so many other U.S. government institutions and the relationship between government and private business. Jeffrey Epstein is part of a class of what are effectively professional fixers, and This is a kind of class of professional who sits not really within a particular government or private sector institution, but in the kind of sticky layer between them that connects them all.
Because this isn't just about one man anymore. It's not just about Jeffrey Epstein. It's about the people around him, the connections, the repeated patterns, the uncomfortable overlaps that keep showing up no matter how much time passes. And what nobody expected was just how many familiar faces would end up in that conversation. For years, the story of Epstein has lived in this strange space between fact and disbelief. On one side, you had official reports, court documents, and testimonies. On the other, you had rumors, speculation, and theories that most people didn't know what to do with. But here's the thing people often forget. Epstein didn't operate in isolation.
There's a place where they bring elites to compromise them with underage girls and they film them. Really? Like, what? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Like, no, President Clinton's been there. Everyone's been there. Like, what? It sounds like nonsense. And not only is it true, but people keep getting fucking murdered for it. Did you see that latest Clinton advisor that got murdered about it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hung with an extension cord, shot himself in the chest 30 miles from his house, and they're calling it a suicide.
And now even Elon Musk is asking, where's the clientele list?
Yeah.
We should probably see who's been to that island.
Yeah, we should probably see who's been to that island. And there's...
What you're about to hear sounds like something straight out of a movie, but this time it didn't come from a script. It came from a microphone, a podcast, a conversation that quickly turned into something much bigger than anyone expected. Because when Joe Rogan sat down and started talking about the Epstein files, he didn't hold back, not even a little. He didn't tiptoe around it. He didn't sugarcoat it. He went straight for the names, the same names that have been whispered about for years, but never openly discussed like this.
The guy who told me about Epstein's Island more than a decade ago, and I thought it was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. I was like, what are you saying? There's an island, like it sounds like a plot in a movie. There's an island where they fly famous rich scientists and politicians, and they compromise them with underage girls and get it on film so they could use it against them. I'm like, what? That sounds like lizard people. It sounds like, 5G creates COVID. Same thing. Yeah. But turns out it was true. And it's one of many things. He was the first one to warn me about a social credit score system. He's like, they're going to try to implement a social credit score system, and your money is going to be tied. They'll have centralized digital currency, and your money will be tied to your social credit score system. And you step out of line, you won't be able to buy things. You won't be able to travel. You won't be able to do anything. They're going to try to keep you within a 15-minute radius of your home, and they're starting to do that.
And the shocking part, he did it all in under 30 minutes. 30 minutes. That's all it took for one of the most powerful voices in media to shake the internet, spark outrage, and make millions of people stop and ask one simple question. How deep does this really go? Because this isn't just about one man anymore. It's not just about Jeffrey Epstein. It's about the people around him, the connections, the repeated patterns that keep showing up no matter how much time passes. And what nobody expected was just how many familiar faces would end up in that conversation. For years, the story of Epstein has lived in this strange space between fact and disbelief. On one side, you had official reports, court documents, and testimonies. On the other, you had rumors, speculation, and theories that most people didn't know what to do with. But here's the thing people often forget: Epstein didn't operate in isolation.
And the chairman of a prominent law firm is stepping down over his association with Jeffrey Epstein. Paul Weiss law chair Brad Karp says in a statement, quote, "Recent reporting has created a distraction and has placed a focus on me that's not in the best interest of the firm." The firm says Karp will remain with the firm, just in a different role. Senior Washington reporter Will Staken is here for more. Hi, Will. So what's the latest on this growing list of prominent people facing scrutiny over the Epstein files?
Yeah, Diane, well I think, Mr. Karp right here is kind of the latest fallout from these Epstein files. Like you said, the really powerful law firm Paul Weiss announced that Mr. Karp would be stepping down after his name appeared in these files. Now, the law firm did not give a reason why Mr. Karp is stepping down, and previously the law firm denied Mr. Karp had any wrongdoing, but with this release of these files, his name appears in the files, mostly with his assistant trying to schedule meetings with Mr. Epstein. But there's an email between Mr. Karp and Epstein where he's asking about if he could help get his son some kind of job in an upcoming Woody Allen film. So I think these emails, obviously are continuing to have fallout across, widespread industries. It's kind of the latest fallout here. We saw recently that popular wellness influencer Peta Attia also stepped down from his role at the protein company David.
But here's the twist. When you place those names next to travel records, emails, and repeated interactions, the narrative starts to shift. Slowly at first, then all at once. Rogan brought up how certain individuals maintained contact with Epstein even after his conviction. That detail alone raised eyebrows because it leads to a very simple question that doesn't have an easy answer. Why? Why continue communication with someone surrounded by that level of controversy? Why keep the connection alive when walking away would have been the safest move? Some have said it was business. Others claim they were unaware of the full situation. And a few have argued that Epstein was manipulating people, using information as leverage. That explanation, it sounds plausible until you look closer. Because if someone is truly dangerous, truly toxic to your reputation, most people don't stick around. They create distance. They disappear from that person's orbit completely.
It's factually true that I was only at dinners. I never went to the island. I never met any women. And so, the more that comes out, the more clear it'll be that although the time was a mistake, it had nothing to do with that kind of behavior.
There we go. I never met any women. Wow, we're going to This is getting curiouser and curiouser, Esther.
Yes, it is. And unfortunately for Bill Gates, now he has to probably deal with the insinuation, at least for many people, that Melinda chose to divorce him and get herself out of that world. Also because of his association or his tenuous links, which he denies, with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, the allegation that he presumably got an STD from a Russian prostitute that was associated with Jeffrey Epstein was actually written in a note by Jeffrey Epstein to himself. So it wasn't actually a form of correspondence. So there are allegations that he wrote that for the purposes of explicit blackmailing, which again will become clearer later on down the line. But obviously the damage is already done. I mean, it's just a terrible, terrible story.
But that's not what always happened here. In fact, what Rogan highlighted was the opposite: repeated meetings, continued communication, overlapping timelines that stretch far beyond what most people expected. And then there's the topic that really shook listeners: the idea that Epstein didn't just build connections randomly. Think about it. Access at that level doesn't happen by accident. You don't just walk into circles filled with global elites unless someone opens the door for you, unless there's a system, a network, something operating behind the scenes. Rogan suggested that Epstein may have been more than just a wealthy individual hosting parties, that there could have been a structure, a method to how he built and maintained those relationships.
I also met Jeffrey Epstein exactly one time.
Did you?
Yes, because I wanted to see who this man was. And I regretted it from the second I stepped in the door. He was abhorrent. He was evil personified. I had nightmares about it afterwards. So, you know, my heart breaks for these young women because that's how I felt. And here I'm an older woman. My God, I feel terrible for those young women. It was awful.
And suddenly, the story feels a lot bigger than one person. Because if that's true, then Epstein wasn't the center of the web. He was just one part of it. What really caught people off guard was how casually Rogan moved through these points. No dramatic pauses, no exaggerated tone, just calm, direct conversation. And somehow, that made it hit even harder, because it didn't feel like a conspiracy rant. It felt like someone connecting dots in real time, looking at information that's already out there, and asking why more people aren't talking about it. He mentioned how certain names keep appearing in different contexts: flights, events, communications, not once or twice, but repeatedly. And again, that doesn't prove wrongdoing, but it does create a pattern that becomes harder to ignore the more you look at it.
There's a lot of those guys that wound up going to that island. They probably thought, this is great. We get to party.
Nothing's free.
And they probably felt like they were rock stars because they get to hang out with the intellectual elite on an island with a guy who's just a billionaire philanthropist who's eccentric, who just loves women. He's a professed bachelor. And it all seemed too good to be true.
It's so true.
Because it was.
Yeah.
So I think he was an asset. Whether or not it was for the Mossad strictly, or Israel strictly, or the United States strictly, whether it was a CIA thing, whatever, I don't know. But I think it was probably a part of a blackmail compromise effort.
Yeah.
Because those guys, there's a fucking dirty secret about these people that are in Congress, and they party. Okay? They're regular guys and regular women, and they're in their 30s or 40s or whatever they are, and every now and then they do coke, and they get drunk, and they...
Human beings.
Remember that DC madam that had a whole book of people, and then she wound up committing suicide? She said, I'm not suicidal, and
see ya.
Yeah, because there's probably a lot like that. And those kind of honeypot operations, they let these freaks know, like, hey, you're going to be safe with me. Charlie will take care of everything. Look, Bill Clinton used to come here. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And we're going to go to the island.
And that's a big endorsement. It's like, presidents were here, so it must be a secure area.
Exactly.
I can get down.
Are on the island with Bill. Yeah. This is fine.
And all these girls show up, and you're like, well, this is Christmas in July.
Bill was really interested in string theory. He'd like to talk to you about string theory. So you're sitting down there having cocktails while Bill Clinton's getting a massage from some girl who's rubbing her tits against the back of his head while she's massaging. He's like, hey, that's really interesting. Hey, I'm kind of tired. I'm gonna take a nap.
Another thing about black holes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they all thought that it was this lovely exchange of powerful people and brilliant people. And then they were just getting dirt on all of them. Guys cheating on their wives, guys whether knowingly or unknowingly having sex with underage girls.
Everybody
And
wants to be.
Maybe some guys, that was their thing.
Sure.
Because it seemed like with Epstein, that was his thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I don't think there's any evidence to either. I think it's all been, I don't think there was collected with that plea deal, and I don't think there's any list that's going to point to, there's no smoking gun.
I don't know about that.
I think it's all been, taken care of. I think that I think you could open up every file.
But that's the truth. Why did they have all those files? Why did they parade around with these binders?
Because
do you remember those photo ops that they said? Like, look, they did like a thing. We have the Epstein files right here, and they had binders. Like, what kind of political theater is that? If you don't really have the Epstein files, like, what is
theater.
that?
And what I mean by that is I think, like, if they are keeping something quiet, it's because it's video of underage girls, or it's video of the victims who don't want that to be out there. And the Justice Department cannot make that public. They cannot bring that to Congress. That's all sealed for their privacy, right?
Well, that is the argument. But then they're saying now that there are no files. They're saying there's no video.
I believe that. Don't you?
Boy, I don't know. I think they have video. I think if you've got an island and you want compromise on people, you can't just have hearsay.
I would say I would agree.
I watched him fuck that girl. Let's sue him. No, that's not how it works. You have to have video, and then you have to show it to the guy. Like, Mr. Clinton, have a seat.
Yeah.
What nobody expected was how quickly this conversation spread. Clips started circulating everywhere. Social media exploded with reactions. Some people were shocked, others were skeptical, and many were simply trying to process what they had just heard. Because this wasn't just another podcast moment. This felt different. It felt like a shift. Like the kind of conversation that forces people to re-examine things they thought they understood. And then came the backlash. Of course it did. Whenever names like this are mentioned, especially in this context, pushback is inevitable. Critics argued that Rogan was feeding speculation, that discussing these connections publicly could be misleading without full context. And to be fair, that's a valid concern. But supporters saw it differently. They believed he was doing what others wouldn't, bringing attention to patterns that deserve scrutiny, asking questions that haven't been fully answered. And in the middle of all that noise, one thing became clear. People are paying attention again. The Epstein story, which many thought had faded into the background, suddenly feels alive once more. Not because of new evidence, but because of renewed focus.
Justice Department official says the review of the Jeffrey Epstein files is over. The same official indicated there would be no new charges. Now the Trump administration is facing backlash from Epstein survivors and Democrats. This was California Congressman Rogan yesterday.
There is a demand for elite accountability, but the survivors' lawyers that I've talked to have said that the survivors are still upset. They're upset that many of their names accidentally came out without redactions, and they want to make sure the rest of the files come out.
CBS News Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us from our Washington bureau with more on this. Scott, you've been sifting through as much of this as you can. What's in this so-called final batch?
It's a process. We're still working through millions of pages here, Errol. And it's worth noting these were released more than 40 days after the legal deadline for the Department of Justice to do so. No one besides Epstein and former associate Ghislaine Maxwell has been charged. But the Department of Justice insisting its work is done has only fueled more controversy.
Because when someone with that level of influence starts connecting dots out loud, people listen. But here's the part that really lingers. It's not just about who was named. It's about what happens next. Will more information come out? Will more people speak up? Or will this fade away like so many stories before it? That uncertainty, that's what keeps people hooked. Because deep down, everyone senses that there's more to this story than what's been revealed so far. And that's where the emotional weight starts to hit. For the individuals connected, even indirectly, the impact can be massive. Reputations built over decades can be shaken overnight. Public trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to rebuild. Families get dragged into the spotlight. Careers face scrutiny. Every past action is re-examined under a microscope. And for the victims, the conversation brings everything back to the surface again. That's something people often forget. Behind all the headlines, all the speculation, all the debates, there are real people who were affected by what happened. People whose lives were changed in ways that can't be undone. And every time the story resurfaces, so does the pain. That's why this isn't just entertainment. It's not just drama. It's something much heavier, something that forces uncomfortable reflection. Because at its core, this story isn't just about power or fame. It's about accountability, or the lack of it. And that's what makes Rogan's conversation resonate so deeply. Not because he had all the answers.
We were talking about the Epstein releases, like before we got started. Like, first of all,
the
like
photo dump and the emails, it's fucking nuts.
But it's also they're doing it so slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you guys have had this stuff for a year. Like,
we were promised multiple times, it's coming, it's coming.
Doesn't it seem like you could just throw all that into AI at this stage of the game?
Yes.
And just redact the names of the victims and let's go?
Yeah, of course.
It seems like that would take 5 minutes.
I mean, it feels like, you can't help but feel like the administration is just like watching their back, and that's why it's happened.
Watching someone's back?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all speculative why they haven't released it, but it's not good. It's not good for everybody's confidence.
No.
It's not good that this thing was going on, that they had this bizarre blackmail operation running. That's very weird.
Very strange.
Very weird. But it kind of makes sense. Because if you're a 60-year-old billionaire and you're a freak and you like to get your freak on, but unfortunately you're a gigantic software developer and everybody knows who you are.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to get your freak on.
Well, that's the thing is, like, it makes sense when you go like, oh, some of these dudes really liked visiting that place.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the only place they can go.
Right.
You can't go anywhere else.
Right. And that's why they set it up for them.
Yeah.
Eric Weinstein said that to me once. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
If you're the former president of the United States, you can't go to a nightclub.
Yeah, he said, I think there are people out there that provide experiences for certain people that have a hunger for them.
Yeah.
I was like, of course. And that's also how they compromise people too, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's how they get you to vote the way they want you to vote and play ball. Bobby, we got video, you sucking a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
What do you want to do? Yeah. Because, I bet all those people have something on them. That's how they stay in the game.
They have to.
You're like, you skull and bones. You got to suck the dick.
Well, look at,
otherwise we can't trust you.
For the Epstein shit, look at the level of people that we're visiting. I mean, it's all at the highest level of influence, power, and fame.
Yeah.
And so you go, this dude wants to do some wild shit. He can't go to Cheetahs and get it done. You know?
Yeah.
You can't do it. He's got to go somewhere. Yeah. What sounds good? A private island.
Yeah. He can't just order up a call girl.
It's too risky.
Where are you going? I'm going to Captain Billionaire's house to go suck his dick. I do it every Tuesday. Plus, I'm on meth.
But because he was willing to ask the questions, the kind of questions that don't have easy endings, as the dust begins to settle, one thing remains certain. This story isn't over. Not even close. Because every time new information surfaces, every time someone speaks out, every time connections are revisited, the picture becomes a little clearer. And at the same time, a little more complicated. So the real question isn't just who was mentioned, it's what it all means, and whether the full truth will ever come out. Because history has shown us something again and again. The bigger the power, the harder the truth is to uncover. But sometimes, all it takes is one voice, one conversation, one moment, to make the world start paying attention again. And as we reach the end of this story, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. This isn't just another headline that fades away after a few days. This is something that sticks with you. Something that makes you question everything you thought you understood about power, influence, and the people we see on our screens every single day. Because at the center of it all, this was never just about one man. It was about a system, a network,
a world that most people will never fully see, but can definitely feel the impact of. And whether you believe every detail, question every claim, or sit somewhere in the middle, you can't deny that conversations like this are opening doors that were once tightly shut. But here's the real takeaway. The truth doesn't always come all at once. Sometimes it comes in pieces, in conversations, in moments like the one we just witnessed. And it's up to us to pay attention, to think critically, and to ask questions, even when those questions make people uncomfortable. Because silence is what allows things to stay hidden. And awareness, that's where everything starts to change.
Now, maybe more names will come out. Maybe more details will surface. Or maybe, like so many times before, things will slowly go quiet again. But one thing is certain: the curiosity, the doubt, and the need for answers isn't going anywhere. And that's why stories like this matter. Not just for the shock value, not just for the drama, but for what they represent. A reminder that no matter how powerful someone seems, no one should ever be beyond questioning. So as you leave this video, I want you to think about this. What do you believe? What feels real to you? And how much of the truth do you think we've actually seen? Because sometimes the biggest stories aren't the ones with clear endings. They're the ones that leave you thinking long after the video is over. If you made it this far, you're already part of the conversation. So go ahead, drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your perspective on everything we discussed today. And if you found this video interesting, eye-opening, or even a little unsettling, make sure you hit that like button. It really helps push this content out so more people can see it and join the discussion. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're just getting started. There's a lot more to uncover, a lot more stories to break down, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Until then, stay curious, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next one.